Get the full story first.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want to jump in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello again. So it's time for the press preview. We're going to check out tomorrow's front pages as they come into us here at Sky. We'll see what's making the headlines tonight with the political commentator Benedict Spence and the journalist and author Christina Patterson. So nice to see you both again. We will chat in a moment after we've had a look at some of those front pages for you, beginning with the Sunday Times, leading with Prince Andrew over his links to an alleged Chinese spy. Meanwhile, on the front of the Telegraph, claims a Chinese interpreter who worked for the Foreign Office also ran a website pushing China's agenda. Here's tomorrow's Observer, critical of Labour's new plan to build 1.5 million new homes. On the front of the Express, Boris Johnson says Keir Starmer's government must be stopped from tying itself to Brussels again in a major trade deal with Europe. While the PM is accused of betraying the 2016 Brexit vote. That's on the front of the Mail on Sunday. A special investigation by the Mirror suggests the amount of women sleeping rough in the UK is double what the government figures suggest. On the front of the Sun, TV star Eamonn Holmes has told friends he wants to marry his girlfriend after his divorce to TV presenter Ruth Langsford is finalised. And the front of the Daily Star features Holmes Under the Hammer presenter Martin Roberts talking about his encounter with a spooky property. And don't forget, you just need to scan that QR code with your phone. You can check out tomorrow's front papers while you watch us discussing them. And to do that, I'm joined tonight by Benedict Spence and Christina Patterson. Right, why don't we start with the Sunday Times, Christina? They have got a very interesting take, haven't they, on the latest problems facing Prince Andrew. They say that the alleged Chinese spy met Theresa May and David Cameron.
Yeah. I mean, it does raise the question, is Andrew the most stupid man in the United Kingdom? And I have to say that it's a very strong argument that he is. Yes, it sounds as if this Chinese man who is currently referred to as H6 for legal reasons, but there is a sense that his real name will be released fairly imminently, possibly under a parliamentary privilege this week. There are photographs in a documentary, apparently. There are photographs that he displays in his office of meetings with David Cameron and Theresa May. What isn't clear is whether either of them were Prime Minister at the time. But either way, clearly there was a very deliberate process of capturing of the elite. I think there's a phrase for it, like elite capture. And Prince Andrew was one of the people targeted. Whether he actually qualifies as elite is another matter. But he appears to have allowed this person to ingratiate himself. And there is mention by Dominic Hampshire, an advisor to Andrew, who apparently told this Chinese man that he sat at the very top of a tree of Andrew's confidence. I mean, if you thought Epstein was bad, it's just astonishing, absolutely astonishing, that a country that very clearly has ill intentions towards us in all kinds of ways, that people should be allowed to get so near to the establishment. And Prince Andrew's judgment is just breathtakingly bad.
OK, well, I mean, he says that he severed ties with this Chinese businessman as soon as he was warned. He said nothing of a sensitive nature was ever discussed. He met through official channels. And looking at these photographs, you could say that Theresa May and David Cameron also met him through official channels.
Yes, it's entirely possible that nothing untoward has happened, although it's hardly likely that they would turn around and say something official may or may not have been leaked. Whoops. In some ways, it's almost reassuring that we're being targeted by the world's second biggest power for espionage. It shows that in some capacity they still think that we're worth spying on. I think that we have to think about this in terms of actually the sort of the pros and cons of the fact that our democracy is pretty open, our media ecosystem is pretty open, and we are very open to other nations around the world, including countries like China, that are not, in fact, the most friendly towards us, or have been for a very long time, for various different political and economic reasons. This is kind of, you take the rough with the smooth, you open yourself up more, in some ways, to this form of espionage. It is worth pointing out that this is not just one way. We are obviously engaged in espionage against other countries, and the fact that we're not hearing very much about it rather suggests that we're quite good at it, because they're not being found out, otherwise that this would be front page news as well. But I think also we're getting to a stage now when it comes to international espionage where it's getting a lot harder actually to keep secrets from people. I mean, all of our messages, all of our communications, also means royals, government officials, it means members of the security services, are all on devices that can be hacked by other intelligence services and likely already have been. It's very difficult to hide anything. It doesn't matter if you're the CIA trying to hide from the Chinese or the Russians or vice versa. Actually, by and large, a lot of this stuff is out in the open. It's much more, I think, to do with influence in politics rather than getting information out of people. How much influence can you actually wield over, say, a political party? Now, Prince Andrew, I think, as Christina sort of alluded to, that's slightly up in the air, actually, as to how much influence he wields these days. David Cameron, Theresa May, even if we're sort of talking about them as, you know, in the years after being Prime Minister, long since, they still, I think, carry a lot of sway, certainly within their parties. You know, David Cameron was able to sort of walk back into government and was very highly respected for the job that he did. As you say, they would say that this is just part and parcel of the deal. Former Prime Ministers, sitting Prime Ministers, they have to meet lots of people. But that is where I think the question has to be asked, actually. How deep are foreign intelligence agencies able to penetrate not so much accruing information, but getting influence over politicians and perhaps even influencing policy or decisions? And I think beyond just, you know, sort of business people, you've also got to look at things like think tanks. You've also got to look to the media, because they won't just be going down one route. They'll be looking for lots of different avenues. Yeah, it's worth mentioning what Theresa May and Lord Cameron both say. A spokesperson for Theresa May says Baroness May and her husband are photographed at numerous events in any given year. As such, he doesn't remember when or where this particular photograph was taken, or indeed the man in question. A source for Lord Cameron, he was leader of the Conservative Party for over a decade, PM for 6 years. He met thousands of people in that time at hundreds of functions and events. We don't have any further information on this individual. All the papers seem to have a slightly different take on it. The Sunday Telegraph, Christina, is interesting. They say that a Foreign Office interpreter is accused of running a propaganda site amid what you were saying, you know, fears of Beijing's reach.
I mean, again, it just makes the Brits sound like a slightly bumbling bunch of amateurs, really, to have not be checking out. I mean, you know, presumably they thought, well, we don't speak Mandarin or whatever language this blog was written in, but apparently this interpreter was also writing a blog, had a website that has been identified by Microsoft as part of a veiled global network of Chinese Communist Party news websites. Well, clearly someone who is actively promoting the Chinese Communist Party should arguably not be working as an interpreter for the Foreign Office. So it just sounds like amateur hour to me, and that is used as an example, I suppose, of carelessness, really. And we don't know exactly how this guy, this spy, as yet unnamed, managed to infiltrate circles that included Theresa May or David Cameron, or indeed Prince Andrew. But I very much doubt that we are have similar levels of access in China, even though, of course, we will have espionage operations, because they are just much, much tougher about these things. And I think there has been. And of course, it's partly about vested interests, this feeling. George Osborne was very pro-China and wanted to build trade links. And I think poor Keir Starmer, as always, is over a barrel because of Brexit, which he can't say has been a disaster, though clearly it has. So he's also keen to forge trade links. And how you forge trade links while also saying, oh, by the way, the Uyghur, bit of a problem there, or whatever, I don't know. And they don't know either. But I think clearly we haven't been careful enough, and it's a mess.
OK, we're going to move on just briefly, because we need to take a break shortly. Back to the front of the Sunday Times. I mean, what a week it's been in Syria, and the footage and the coverage coming out of that country, unbelievable. Their take is that it'll be bigger than Nuremberg, the hidden archive of Assad's atrocities.
Yeah, the sheer scale of the investigation that's going to be gone into, although perhaps that's also because the Nazis went through a very meticulous phase of burning absolutely everything. So there will be a lot more, because actually the Assad regime, as awful as it is, was not quite as effective on that front. That's partly why it needed to be propped up by two other regimes to stay in power. But there's no question it is an appalling situation that is being revealed. Although we say revealed, this has been a fairly open secret for some time, actually, that what's been going on in Syria is catastrophic, appalling human rights abuses. People detained, disappeared, murdered, tortured for almost any sort of pretext, really, be it, something you've said, your ethnicity, where you happen to live, or somebody just didn't like the look of you. We're discovering that now it's being sort of laid bare, the stuff that we all secretly knew, but now is unavoidable. And I think it does just reinforce the wickedness, actually, of the situation, that once upon a time, a decade ago, this was a big story, and then it just sort of went away, and people thought, oh, well, the news cycle moves on, partly because the United States said, well, this has nothing to do with us, and in the UK, we don't really have the power to intervene on an individual level anyway. But other wars took over, they took precedence. But this never stopped happening. The scale that it was happening on, it never went away. And the people of Syria have been left far too long. And whilst I do understand the fears about liberal interventionism in the Middle East and the disasters that can bring, I do really feel that the fact that we're all sort of waking up to this now and going, oh, good Lord, Syria, that's still a thing? I had no idea that it was still a thing, is really telling, actually, of the sort of the priorities. And one thing I would say is, a strong and secure and prosperous Syria is a vital part of European security interests, not just Middle Eastern. It's vital to Europe as well, and that has to be established going forward.
OK, we are going to have to go to a break, Christine. We'll get your thoughts a little later on the situation in Syria. Coming up after the break, why Labour's being accused of building a new generation of slum homes. Don't go away.
Derby day in Manchester. There is nothing quite like it. Blue and red rock horns. Sports' most compelling soap opera.
The Manchester Derby on USA.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We'd been warned that we would meet people in the lowest moment of their lives.
Their story is one of fundamental American failure. Well, a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club, but I have to say there are more media here than there are supporters.
We love Trump!
I've witnessed the remarkable passion for politics here, but the anger too. This is just the audience that Joe Biden wanted.
Is this the moment to reform gun laws?
You know, it's easy to go to politics.
But it's important, it's at the heart of the issue.
For all the talk of a toned-down, humbled Trump, yes, maybe there was just a little less rhetoric, a little less divisiveness, but in the end it was the same rhythm, the same speech, the same man.
All them people that died in Russia and Ukraine, they'd still be alive today if Donald Trump was president.
If it was my wish, have a businessman that's strong like Trump, but maybe just doesn't say as much, you know?
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What we've been allowed to see over here is a humanitarian corridor. Free wherever you get your news.
A young American medical student is making remarkable things happen.
I've seen a lot of difficult things, and honestly, it breaks my heart. These children don't deserve that.
I don't think there's a single Arab I know who isn't seriously disturbed by what's going on.
And so they gathered for this wonder of nature.
I'm very excited right now.
This is an extraordinary moment beyond anything I could have expected. Sky News, get the full story first.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. Part 2 of the press preview. Benedict and Christina still with us. Let's look at the front page of The Observer, Christina. Tell me about this. The PM condemned for allowing a new wave of slum housing.
Yes, it's a very dramatic headline for something that definitely hasn't happened yet and probably won't. But hey, we all need to have attention-seeking headlines. Of course, this relates to Keir Starmer's promise to build 1.5 million homes in the course of this parliament, which is a very big ambition and will be very difficult to achieve. And it'll be very difficult to achieve, not least because of NIMBYism and also because of sclerotic processes in relation to planning, getting permission for planning and so on. But this actually relates to office blocks becoming residential housing. And this story seems to be based around someone called Hugh Ellis, who's a policy director at the Town and Country Planning Association, has noticed that Labour has not condemned the idea that the Tories introduced of turning office blocks into residential homes. And he is worried that this is going to cause suboptimal housing that's not going to be, high enough standard. All of this is very speculative. We have no idea whether that's going to happen.
Quite a good idea, doesn't it, to term it?
Well, I personally think it is a good idea. Clearly, it's got to be good enough, but I think it's very unlikely that Labour are going to be the people who build, who allow housing that is, really, really unsuitable, given that masses of people in this country are already living in pretty much slums, particularly private rental properties. So, to be honest, I think this is a bit of a story about nothing. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think that people, you mentioned that NIMBYism is one of the major problems. I often think that the quality of housing is one of the things that people often object to most of all, not just in terms of what people have to live in, but also objectively what it looks like. And the fear is, I think, that if you try to do what are ostensibly seem like quite good measures, sort of pre-existing buildings, try to repurpose them, people get a little bit iffy about that because they feel that it's not necessarily suitable for homes. Obviously, we have a massive housing shortfall in this country, but I really do think that the government are, as Christina said, going to struggle, even if they push through these sorts of things. I just don't think that they're going to meet those targets.
Interesting idea. Sunday Times, Benedict, reforms money man to link up with Musk.
So this is Nick Candy, formerly of Conservative donor, now Reform donor, who's giving lots of money to Nigel Farage. Is going to supposedly have a meeting with Elon Musk to discuss funding. It's not happened yet, but of course Musk was one of the key drivers behind Donald Trump's campaign. And I think that this is something you're going to see a lot more of this, not just in the United States, but I think in Europe, because I think whereas once upon a time the MAGA movement sort of saw itself in quite isolationist terms, I think it now, with the expansion of China and its remit, looks at Europe as being a bit of part of the the US sphere. And it looks at the politics of what's happening in Europe, and it looks at the declining growth and a lot of what it considers to be quite sluggish politics, and it thinks this is an area ripe for us to basically take control of. And obviously that's of interest to people like Elon Musk, because they don't like all the regulations that there are around tech and social media that the European Union obviously has come to blows with Musk in the past. So I think you're going to see, not just in the UK, also in Europe, I think you're going to see a lot more interest, if you like, from Silicon Valley donors from the United States, not just in terms of giving their money, but also their tactics to insurgent right-wing parties, or maybe even left-wing parties, if they promise to deregulate, in order to get what they want. I think that this is going to be a bit of a theme. Whether or not they actually raise the sort of money that's being talked about, this talks about 25 million to make Nigel Farage Prime Minister. I'm not entirely convinced that that's going to happen, but we wait and see. Yeah. You're going to see a lot more of this sort of theme going forward, I think.
One sentence on this, Christina.
Sorry.
Elon Musk, mad, ghastly. Nick Candy, not great. I just think lots of very, very rich men are trying to determine the future of various democracies, and it feels pretty unpleasant. And Elon Musk's interference in British politics through X has been puerile and horrible, and I hope they'll go
Benedict,
away.
Christina, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party.
I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi.
Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.